Oh, I'm kind of excited because I wasn't quite sure if my internet was going to work today. We've had some pretty intense weather up here in the Pacific Northwest. We had a lot of wind, and so hi Grace, want to come up? Come over here. Um, so internet has been a little bit slow, but we're here. Yay! And somebody is here. Hello, whoever you are. Thanks for being here. Hey, I'll say right away that if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, Dr. Rosie, I would love it if you did, if you find that it's valuable for you. And you might find there are a lot of playlists here that you would find interesting besides this particular um, information on spirituality per se. Um, so please subscribe. That lets YouTube know that what I'm sharing with you is of value. And like it if you like it. Share it if you know people who have issues or are having to be with stuff that's really uncomfortable and they don't know how to support themselves through that. This channel and or this particular episode of spirituality may be of value to them. So please feel free to share it and like it, and anything else that you have to share. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And this is Gracie, and sometimes she wants to be a part of the show, right? Yes. Okay. Oh. So today we're talking about spirituality in relation to dark night of the soul. So quite often we think that if we're being spiritual, let me know if it's still working. We think if we're doing good things, we're at life good for us, and it's always good for us. Don't it's me. God dwells within me. And so I want to be the fullest expression. Can come in 100 ways, thousands of ways, to be you as the highest expression of yourself. What that means is every single aspect of humanity for being an expression of the divine, whether that's depression, despair, all the big D words, or an expression. So everything, my perspective again, is that everything is an aspect of God. Everything is a source, is sourced in the universal source of all that is. So you have to find your articulation of what's true for you. I'm just sharing what's mine. So in my 60 some, almost 70 years on the planet, I've had a lot of experience, and I've had a lot of opportunity to contemplate and think about and work through the patterns of my life. I've had a lot of opportunities to address issues that have been very challenging to me, and so part of these YouTube lives is my sharing not only my academic experience with my PhD, blah blah blah, or my experience with clients as a therapist, spiritual guide, transformational coach, but also my personal experience with this process of spirituality and the unfolding of that and what it means. And my intention for these lives is to support and empower you to get to know who you are in your experience as a human being. Who are you in this? And quite often people go, well, I'm looking for my purpose in life. And in essence, our purpose in life is to grow and to explore our capacities, where we limit ourselves and where we constrain ourselves. And our purpose is to move through and do stuff and be with stuff so that we can let go of or expand our capacity to be beyond our limitations and our constraining thoughts, feelings, and all the rest of it. So I want for you to be able to have that for yourself, where you're in the question of who am I? And in the question of what's mine to do, what's mine to be with, what's mine to explore, what's mine to understand. A lot of people think that in poor, there's something wrong with you, or that you're being punished, or you're being deprived. And people who have money, that you have some sort of privilege, and that you're somehow higher on the scale of spirituality. Better off then. But the truth is we're all here having the experiences that we're having, so that we can learn, grow through that. Whether it's through, we learn and grow through our circumstances of poverty, or our circumstances of wealth, or our circumstances of health, our circumstances of illness or disease, is where we can grow ourselves. And that's, for me, what here, the purpose. So when I wondered what my purpose would be in life, it's like, oh, I'll be a therapist, or I'll be a coach, or I'll be a spiritual guide, or whatever that is, or I'll be a mom. No, those are just portals. Those are just avenues through which I can grow my sense of knowing myself in all the ways possible. So part of what's the challenge here is we think that if we stay on the path and we're doing it right, and we're good people, that bad things won't happen to us, first of all. And second of all, that we will always feel taken care of, guided. And that means that I'll always feel safe. I'll always feel safe. And I will say, yes, that is true. And we're given opportunities to be with ourselves in a way that we have to grow our own capacity to cultivate that safety from within. And that's a big deal. So, for instance, if you're climbing Mount Everest and you're down in the village, and then you get to base camp 1, it's, oh, I can do this. This is easy enough. And I'm got my strength and my skills. Then when you go from base camp 1 to base camp 2, you're going to be experiencing things you've never experienced before. Hello, David. Glad you're here. And you're in that experience, you're going to meet challenges that have you question your capacities, your strengths, your attitudes, your moods, your willingness to move forward. You're having to question who you are inside, and how can you move beyond what feels like limitations and constraints of your physicalness, or maybe your attitudes. And so we one way of doing that through parenting, through illnesses, through wealth or poverty, losing a job. There's all kinds of circumstances that show up where we have to meet ourselves in ways that we thought we would never have to, because we're good people, or we never hurt anybody, we never say anything bad, we eat the right foods, all of those things. But we're provided with circumstances that have us meet our edge of truth, edge of experience. It's where we meet the unknown, the uncertainties, the unyet realized. Hi, Marge. Glad you're here. So in those circumstances show up that people who, again, have diseases that they weren't expecting, or even a friend of mine I mentioned, who is 91 years old, and he'd had a blessed life with his partner of 65 years. And she's got Alzheimer's, and she just fell down a couple of months ago and broke her hip. And so she's in another town, and he can't get there. And so he's experiencing grief, and he's experienced a depth of experience that he's never had before. Circumstances brings each of us to these places, this depth of reality, And we call it despair and depression. We call it horrible, terrible things. And because we call it horrible, terrible things, it feels horrible and terrible. And it feels horrible and terrible. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like we just don't want, it feels like hell, whatever that is for each and every one of us. So when we're in a sense, what I call it a spiritual immersion process. Another word for it is spiritual emergence. Another word for it is dark night of the soul. So any of those places or any of those scriptures where we're losing our sense of connection with the world that we had created, that's all part of what is happening in these dark nights of the soul or spiritual immersion processes. Is we're being, it's, and again, it's a both and in a sense. Our human self doesn't remember that we made an agreement or said, hell yes, I can't wait to go from base camp 2 to base camp 3, and I'm going to do that through this human experience. But when we're in the circumstance of that base camp 2 to 3, whatever that means, poverty, loss of whatever that is, it's like, hell no, don't want to go there. No, I want to turn back. I'm done. I don't, like, stop. Let me go back to the way it was. And we can't. We bring ourselves to this place. It's like a couple of analogies or metaphors would be the butterfly that, this is a caterpillar, and the caterpillar that, unbeknownst to him, will create this cocoon. He's not going, oh, I'm going to create this cocoon and I'm going to have this hero's journey and it's like, no, he's just in it. And then he creates this cocoon and he goes inside, and in that cocoon, he begins to, the process of metamorphose begins to happen. Alchemy, transformation, whatever you want to call it, something is happening inside him, and he will be in there until he begins to transform and transmute into that butterfly that can then eventually break through the cocoon and be free. Jonah in the whale was his cocoon. We go through a birth process where we're in the uterus for 9 months. And then we have to go through this experience of a birth process. Stan Groff calls it the birth matrix. There's all these various stages of the birth process. We go from a place of what is relative stillness and peacefulness and bliss as far as the baby's concerned, and then all of a sudden the water breaks or contractions begin, and something starts to squeeze down on this little being. No idea what's happening. Quite often is hell no way out. It's like things are happening and the blood is constricted, so the blood vessels are so in the umbilical cord, so they start to they can't get the oxygen they need. So all these crazy, insane things are happening that there's no explanation for a child inside. And so they're in this place of hell no way out. And I know many times in my life where I have experienced that quality of experience of this is hell, and I don't see any way out. So that's part of this dynamic that we'll grow ourselves through. The hell no way out shifts to hell with perspective or movement. When that cervix starts to open, then it's still scary and death-defying for this little being, but they're now moving and progressing through this process. But every single step of the way, it feels like death, because in a way it is. It's a miracle that we survive that level of pressure, that level of pain, that level of constriction, that level of suffocation. And then we come out into the world that has no context. It's like, this sucks. And so now we're in this new reality. Hello, Aisha. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. So So this is all part of this process of, we think, again, if I'm a good person, if I'm a good spiritual person, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to be safe and I'll be taken care of. If I marry the right person, or if I'm a good child, my parents will take care of me and I'll be safe. And but there's this thing happening to us on the spiritual level, or the non-physical, the metaphysical level, whatever you want to call it, something that's happening beyond us that we have no control over. And unless we, even when we pay attention to it, we could still get hit upside the head with this 2x4 and go, how did that happen? How could I possibly be here in this situation that feels like hell? By the way, if down in the description below, there is a link to the boot camp for self-transformation, Inward Bound Boot Camp to Self-Transformation, which could be a really helpful tool for you. It's 20 videos, and that support and empower this process of the butterfly, the caterpillar going into the cocoon, and coming out the other side. The skills and tools that we're learning and growing through, and can be really helpful if you're going through this process or even interested in what that all means. So take a look at the link below. There's also a link below for an organization called the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. And this institute, this American Center for the Integration, it is there to help and support people who've had spiritually transformative experiences that don't know what to do with them. When we have dark night of the soul kinds of experiences, it could be definitely a spiritually transformative experience. So if you have a need for some support, that would be one place to reach out. They have a forum there. You could read what other people's experiences are, and that could be a very helpful place. I really encourage people, and I'll talk about this later, encourage people to get some support and do some research about what it's like to be in these spiritually transformative experiences. It's called spiritual immersion, taking the plunge. And you can go on pretty much any podcast platform and type in my name or spiritual immersion, taking the plunge. And there are 100 podcasts there regarding this process. Like, what is it? What's it like? All challenges, most of the challenges that I experienced and have supported people through. So that'll be down in the link below later. Or just on your podcast site, just type in Dr. Rosie Kuhn or spiritual immersion, IMM, taking the plunge, and that should come up for you. David says, I'm sorry, David, a transformational metanoia, that's right, is a transformational experience. Perhaps one can surrender to the unknown and go forward and resist and stay within one's previous comfort zone. Yes. And that's what we're talking about, is when we are in circumstances or situations where we feel like it's hell and no way out. Whether that is a loss of, I know some people that lost their newborn baby. It was born, stillborn, which would be an incredible experience of hell and no way out of that. Or like I said, the loss, we started this whole COVID thing. There was a huge sense of panic and uncertainty and the unknown, and especially for people who've lost their job or terrible, horrible things where they were separated from what they loved and who they loved. So all these different ways that these moments occur where it's like hell for people. And like you're saying, is we can either learn to go through this process, or we can resist and grasp for normal, grasp for what's going to help me feel better, This is when a lot of people will go turn to substances, alcohol, food, sex, gaming, TV, binging, whatever it is that's going to make themselves feel comfortable. That's what they're going to reach for. I think that's a really important component of going through this process, but sometimes we grasp for that and we forget what this is all about. And it's like you can't forget what it's all about because you don't know what it's all about. Most of us don't know what it's about from the beginning. There's so many people I know that there's a friend of mine who went to Israel on vacation, and she had an experience, and it was like what one would call I forgot. This doesn't help. Her whole system, electrical system, just went into wacky. And she had a spiritual experience in that, but it also just she crashed and burned. And our medical reality doesn't have a place for this. Much of the spiritual processes that people go through, whether it's spiritual immersion process, the word I'm looking for will come. Uh, there's no place for it, and so people are treated as if they're sick or crazy versus being supported through this healing process. So so there's this hellness about it, and this hell no way out thing about it, and how do you be in that is the challenge. For me, I've gone through someone asked me how many times can you have a spiritual immersion, a dark night of the soul in a life, and I think I have no idea how many any person has had. I've had 3 specific times in my life. Once was when I was an adolescent, one was when I was in my 30s, and then one when I was in my early 60s. The one that I had in my early 60s is the one that stuck, in a sense. When I was in my teens, I had no support. I had no context for what was happening to me. I had no way out. And so the best that I could do was to hope it would go away. And eventually it did. I probably was in depression for almost 2 years. And I did not have any support that gave me any references or support or research. Now I was in my it was 1968, I think, when that was happening. So not much research, not much access to research. My dad was a doctor, but he had no references for this kind of thing. And so I just had to wait it out. And next time was when I was in my late 30s, and I had by then had gone through a couple of master's degrees that had a spiritual transformative perspective. And that gave me a perspective that I could be in while I was going through this. So it gave me that foundation of, okay, this is happening to me, and how do I be in it to make the most of it? So where the first I was in a lot of emotional pain, I'll say emotional, like depression, more numbness. In the second one, I was in a lot of physical pain. And in a sense, there was nothing that was causing the physical pain other than that I was in this process. And so the pain of, say, karmic energy, or the density of my old patterns. So it's like what you're saying, David, those old was excruciating about my own personal experience being a non-custodial mother. When I left my custody of their dad, I just kind of shut down. First of all, I just stayed in hope, or in the knowing that someday come live with me. And second of all, I just, in order to survive that trauma of letting go of my children, that was and emotional pain that was happening. And it was a big be with, and that lasted about 6 months, I think. In terms of the depth of it was about 3 months, and then it started to dissipate, and then 6 months it felt Like I could breathe and I had some space. Did a lot of walking. I was outside in nature a lot. I lived in Nova Scotia. And so nature's for me a very, very nurturing experience that helped me through that process. And then the final one happened in when I turned 60-ish. It had nothing to do with turning 60, but it was about that period of time that stuff started to happen. And it was a spiritual immersion process. And my expectation and my attachment was life was going to get so good. And when nothing happened, I started this decline. And it was this, I was able to, and because at that point I'd had my PhD and a lot of training in transpersonal work, and what I was thinking of, that word before I'm saying is Kundalini. Is when people have Kundalini experiences, it can be very huge body experience. So, I was having all of these experiences in my early 60s that, again, I thought, it's just a short thing, maybe it's 3 months. And then someone says, oh, it'll be 9 months because that's the birthing process. It's like, okay, 9 months. And then it was a year, and then it was 2 years. What we think of as a dark night of the soul is, again, we're immersing ourselves. We've been avoiding everything, so much of ourselves, because we're trying to stay in consensus reality. We're trying to stay true to all of the things that we've been told and taught, all of the in alignment. And when we realize that it doesn't work, like this happens a lot, quite often, when people are in their midlife, the midlife crisis, is they go, wait, this doesn't have meaning to me anymore, or this marriage is not what I wanted in my life. This is what I thought I wanted, or all of these things that are part of a reality, a consensus view of reality that we think is what is. But when we realize it's not, things start to break down. Quite often when people get sick, they, especially with something that's terminal, or we hear the word cancer and we go, oh, they're going to die. That's not necessarily true anymore. But those words, when we get sick with a terminal, incurable disease, helplessness of life, the existential crisis of the truth of what is and that's what we don't want to face in life. So often we don't want to face the isness of life. We want to sugarcoat it or put the hope. I hope it'll get better. I'm staying in this marriage because I hope it'll get better. I'm staying in this job because I'm hoping I'll get a raise, or I'll get something that makes it worthwhile to stick around. But when we get to a point where we go, wow, there's no way out, then there is that point of hellness about that, or as a client explained as an abyssness. It's like being in an abyssness of it, and the experience of that is far greater than most languages can describe. So I'm just going to read this here and then maybe go through my notes to make sure I'm going to connect with most of what I wanted to say here. So I'll just read this. There are moments in a person's life when hell is the only word used to describe the experience. One feels lost, alone, invisible, ignored, hopeless, helpless, and powerless. What once had meaning now has no meaning. What once had value has no value. Without tools or a map to guide us through such a process, we feel as if we are sentenced to eternal darkness of our soul with a way out. However, the truth is that this is part of our spiritual journey, not the end of the journey itself. It's like a butterfly. You feel free to free yourself from your cocoon through the metamorphose of your spirit self. But quite often when we're in that sense of sentence to eternal darkness, quite often people feel like they were really close to God, and then all all of a sudden they feel abandoned by God. They feel abandoned, and they don't, again, there's something bigger here happening that is part of this dynamic within us. And I'm having a difficult time articulating it because it's really hard to articulate. David says, grief has its own time for healing. I think that the dark night of the soul is a process of realignment of mind to a higher spiritual understanding, a shifting of reality, a paradigm shift. Absolutely. Absolutely. And my articulation of that, especially in the podcast, the Spiritual Immersion podcast, I'll just write that here so that people can see it. Spiritual immersion is, we can talk about it, but how do you prepare somebody for that? Other than just it's a process that takes as long as it takes, and there is that culmination. I'm just reaching right now. So Dave, anything I'll say, or Aida or Marge, anything that you guys can share of that experience for you? It's pretty interesting. I think that I am more in a spiritual immersion process now, and I think I will remain in this spiritual immersion process for the rest of my life, where I was growing in the world for support and identity. I have had to constantly, and Velta is here. Hello, Velta. I have had to constantly realign myself to come to a higher sense of truth. So part of the work that I do with people in transformational coaching, or whatever it is you want to call it, is help people listen for what is their highest knowing, what is their highest truth, what is their highest want. And quite often we go, yes, that's what I want, but that would mean I would lose my marriage, or I would lose my health, or I would lose my life, or I would, I'd have to give up A, B, C, D, and G. And it's like, okay. And so now we're in a dilemma. Here's my highest truth, my highest knowing, my highest want. This is the whole thing about a dark night of the soul, is we're having to grapple with these attachments and disconnect ourselves from those attachments so that we're freer to be a choice, what feels more peaceful. So it's that our attachments make the dark night of the soul even more, in a sense, a strangulation, because we have no way out but to see how we're holding on to what no longer works, what no longer serves, what no longer is a belief system that we thought was going to support us, but doesn't. And at the same time, it's like being on a trapeze where we're swinging over to that next trapeze, but it's not yet in sight, or that trapeze isn't yet coming towards us. And so we have no sense of, we have a trajectory of out into uncertainty. And unless we have faith, the faith that there is something out there, then we're in this despair, we're in this dread, we're in this state of business. And many people go there and they don't come out. And a lot of people with PTSD, they've experienced trauma and they don't feel safe enough to disconnect or ditch themselves from that experience of the trauma. And so they carry it with them. And so that's just hell. It's just hell. So what I want is to give people that sense of, okay, someone's been there before, someone's talking about it. Spiritual immersion, taking the plunge. There is not just my work, but there's a lot of work in the world where there's information, but also techniques or experiences can support you through that process of the dark night of the soul, or whatever you want to call it. Any questions or thoughts? Um, I'm going to move back down here a little bit and talk about what I found was really helpful. And there were basically 5 or 6 really, really important things that were really helpful to me. One was to drink a lot of water. One was to rest. One is to be in nature and or bring nature inside, in a sense. I am immersed in nature, as you can see outside my window. And it was snowing last night, so we have beautiful snow here, which is just a delight. But when I'm out and I can't be outside, I've got orchids, I've got my fish, I've got my dog. I bring nature inside as well. So when we're in these experiences, we need the support of nature and as much as we can. So I say, get outside, be outside, but also exercising. For me, walking outside, where people can go to the gym, I think we need to be more immersed in nature because there's a lot of healing energy in nature that we don't appreciate and we don't acknowledge or we don't even understand. And what we don't understand, we tend to ignore. What has been very, very helpful for me is being outside and walking outside at least an hour a day, at least, in a sense. Some person said, if you're a busy person, you be outside an hour a day. If you're a really busy person, be outside 2 hours a day, because you need that healing energy come in to support you. Number 4 is work. I think it's really, really important to be productive in terms of a work. For me, work, and that can mean being in the garden, or it can mean, I don't do that particularly, but it could mean folding my clothes before I go to bed. It can mean, working with clients. I found that working with clients, even though I was going through this very, very dark time, very difficult time emotionally, that it gave me a sense of connection. It gave me a sense of functioning. It gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me a sense of service. It took me out of myself. And quite often that really helps. A lot of people in 12-step programs find that they helping other people helps them. And I can't tell you how often my clients, in a sense that because of our conversations with my clients, I gain insights like, oh, I should use that on myself of what I'm supporting or encouraging or empowering other people to do. So and the healing energy of connection and presence is really important. And so that brings me to another one, which is getting support or having a connection. So that can be a coach or a therapist. It can be a psychologist, or it can be a friend, or it can be a community, or it can be a group of people who are also going through dark, hard times. So we have those opportunities. There's so much online now in terms of Zoom groups or other support groups that can be helpful in meeting your needs or other people's needs. And again, if you know people who could use this information, please share this with other people. So exercise is really important. Work is really important. Being creative. I can't tell you how important it is. And other than to say, if you go to any mental health unit or if you go to homes for seniors, they're always providing craft opportunities, crafting and basket weaving or knitting or something, because it's so important to our spiritual self. I mean, we are creation. We are created and we are creators. That's what we're here to do. We're here to be an expression of the divine. And so when we shut down or we go into this abyssness, we feel hopeless and powerless and helpless, and we feel our contribution to the world in any way is completely insignificant. So when we begin to create something, we are at least being an expression of the truth of our essential nature, even in the worst of times. So, and I found when I was in my 30s going through this, and I was making little paintings, and I would be immersed in my insanity. But as I was working on this piece and painting, I felt these sparks of truth. I felt these sparks of myself, like, wow, that was me. I was back for a minute. And so the more that I worked with my painting and creativity, the more I came out again. I began to heal, in a sense, from the inside out. So it's a really, really important part of our health and well-being, whether we're in dark night of the soul or just in our everyday life. Creativity is so important to our health and well-being. I knit, I do all kinds of things because I love being a creative, and it's so important. My work as a writer, my work as a coach is constantly drawing on the capacity to be creative with my clients. It's something that makes me so happy because I'm expanded being and not just this coach doing coach things or a therapist doing therapist things. I'm not a therapist. I'm just saying, but I'm way out in terms of taking in whatever I can as creative sources of creation that come to me so I can be of help and support to other people. Dancing, singing, painting, expressive arts, whatever it is that gets that energy out or moving is a really good thing. Breathing is really important. A lot of people do breath work, but also in terms of meditations, there's that some breath piece, but being aware that we're breathing is very, very important. And noticing where you want to hold your breath. I know this place of wanting to hold your breath because if you breathe, you start to feel the emotions that are in you. Emotions are energy in motion. And when we breathe, we allow that emotion to start to happen, that energy to move, and it feels really uncomfortable. That's the next piece, which is learning how to be with discomfort. We're taught our whole life how to get comfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, there must be something wrong. You're either sick, or your pants are too tight, or you've eaten too much, or you're too wrong and bad. As opposed to discomfort is very much a part of a detoxing process, a purging, a purification process. It's a part of our letting go of the old stuff that no longer serves us, letting you be. Like, what do you do with that? Like, what identifying, new alignments, new energy, new vibrations, new stuff. It's uncomfortable. Went on, off. Something went, and all day I've been thinking, my heart is like doing stuff, and I can't, I don't have the articulation for it other than to say something that's realigning in me, and that's uncomfortable. So if we can come to know that kind of process, especially if you're a person who supports other people, then you can say, you're in this place where you're letting go of the old. It's out with the old and in with the new. It's Paul Selig talks about it in terms of alchemy. This is an alchemy process. We call it transformation. It's alchemy because it's all re-energizing and re-frequencing and redoing stuff that's way beyond our understanding. But I know the difference. I know what's happening. I can experience the shifts that are opening, or like the veils keep just dropping away little by little. And it's phenomenal experience that you can't, I can't tell you what it's like other than to say, if you're in it, you'll come out the other end, and you'll have discovered so much more yourself, and being able to notice, here's what's causing the discomfort is I'm holding on to something as opposed to letting go. I have held on to my identity identity as a mother, for instance, since I was three 3 years old. I wanted to be a mom, and I'm 70, almost 70, and I want to be a mom. And the it's like unrequited love, the relationship that I want in terms of a momness with a person that I call a daughter and a son, it's not there. But what creates the suffering is my attachment to the momness. In my reality, their children, they were born through me, so that must mean they are the channel for my motherness. And it's like, it's not working. It's not working for me. Other people it works for, perhaps, but it's not working for me. So I can go, okay, I'm so attached to this, it's causing me and suffering, and it's causing then conflict in my relationships with my children. And so I have to change. I have to look at, I can change it, but I can look at and notice the attachments that I have to that particular identity, or my identity as a young woman versus the woman that I am. Part of the way, and I get help to go through the process. And it doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's comfortable. It just means have more and more evidence of the truth of this, is that if I'm willing to look at it and go, I need help with this, and I need to see this differently so that I can let go of what's creating suffering for me, then that's what happens. That's what happens. So today I was having something that came through, and it's like heart shifted. I don't know, it's just uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. So the whole point of this, what I'm saying is, it's challenging to learn to be with discomfort. And pains in my backs or my knees or my feet or whatever, if you're afraid that it's something of a medical nature, talk with a doctor. If you need therapeutic support, get some therapeutic support. If you think you're crazy, go check that out with a psychologist. But if generally speaking, you're a high functioning person, but you feel like you're crazy right now, it's probably because you're in some form of a spiritual immersion process or spiritual immersion process. And that's just good to know, I think. And there are lots of people in the world that are here to support and empower you through this process. My job isn't to fix people who are in these processes. My job is to be a steward, in a sense. Yeah, that's what you're going through. That's what it feels like. Yep, that's what it's like. That's what you're in. And people go, well, what's the point of having somebody tell me that? This sucks. Like, yeah, it sucks. But even to have somebody say, yeah, it sucks, and it's really uncomfortable, and it feels like hell. And it's like, yeah, that's true. So it's like getting validated for where you're at in the journey. Like, you're lost. Yeah, you're lost. I hate being lost. I totally get it. I hate being lost too. Yeah, but I don't want to be lost. What are we attached to? Nobody's helping me. Nobody's saving me. Nobody's rescuing me. I feel pissed off. I'm angry. Totally get it. I'm kind of yelling. Sorry. That's the dynamics where we can start to get validation for, oh, I'm just in this spiritual process. And a lot of times I talked about it, but now I got to walk the talk. And I find this true with a lot of therapists or people who are coaches or whatever. It's like walking the talk is not what they want to do. They just want to talk the talk. Hey, let me tell you how to do it. And I think that's what really brought on this most recent spiritual immersion process for me is that I was really good at talking the talk, but I had to come down and walk the walk. And then I can be more supportive and much more empowering to other people because I know what I'm talking about, the experience itself. Being in that abyssness, in that hell, no way out, I am a master at it. David says, I think it's important to who you open yourself to. There are so many who do not care and will take advantage. Absolutely. Part of the challenge is that, again, a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists will label someone as dysfunctional or give them a diagnosis that has nothing to do with their experience. This is true with a lot of people who've had near-death experiences of some sort, and they go to a psychiatrist and they get medicated, and they're not seen or respected for their true experiences. That's why I talked about earlier, I talked about SIST, which is the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. And there's also the IONS group, the International Near-Death Group, International Association for Near-Death Studies. So this that can be given support and empowerment through those processes. So we don't have to see ourselves as sick and 15 years, I think, 10 at least. And she comes into these places where she's like, I just feel crazy. It's like, yeah. However, she doesn't have the spirit. It's like, yeah. However, she doesn't have the spirit, even though she's been working, her reality doesn't have the spiritual foundations to allow us to have a conversation about a bigger perspective, an overview, because her reality doesn't allow that right now. And I keep exercising those muscles with her, but it just keeps coming back to this place of, I'm afraid I'm sick and crazy. And it's like, she's not. She's highly functional. She's a highly amazing woman, but she isn't willing to immerse herself here in this process, in this truth. So yeah, David, I truly agree with you that there are so many people who do not care and will take advantage. And that's true for spiritual teachers. That's true for other places that are looking to have you come into the fold, but they don't have the dynamics. They don't really aren't there to. In their way, they think they're helping, but for a lot of people, it becomes like, yeah, no, this isn't helpful, but I don't know how to get out of here, and that's a big challenge for a lot of people. So thanks for bringing that piece in. The piece I'll leave you with, I've got a few more minutes here. Exercise, I read this today, exercising faith. If we don't have faith in something beyond our three-dimensional world, we kind of get stuck, and we are in suffering and pain. But again, it would be an attachment to, this is how it's supposed to look. This is how it's supposed to feel. This is how it's supposed to be. And when it's not that, but we don't have something beyond ourselves, beyond this is what I have faith in. And if this isn't going to work, if this isn't working, then it sucks. So cultivating faith in something beyond ourselves is the huge practice. I think it was David Hawkins, who's an amazing guy and had all kinds of spiritual experiences. And he had been an alcoholic, and at some point he was very, very close to death, And he said, if there is a God, please let me make yourself known, something like that. And in that moment, he got bada bada boom, whatever that was. And he went, wow. And that helped him cultivate greater degrees of faith, even though he had had spiritual experiences his whole life. So it's a fascinating process. Jax 33 is here. I think I know you, but I don't know. So, and that we can admit powerlessness and learning, growing our capacity to experience that there's something beyond, some greater power out there, some greater power somewhere that will support me through this. And I turn this over and over and over again. Big deal. So if this has been helpful, if you've found value, please give me a thumbs up on it. That would be great. That lets me know. If you have questions about this process, Dark Night of the or spiritual immersion, leave a comment below. Or if you've had your own personal experiences with Dark Night of the Souls or this place of hell, no way out, please leave that below. I think that would be really helpful for other people who are reading comments to say, yeah, she's saying it. She's got it. Yeah, she's saying it the way that it makes sense to me. And if this is useful to you and you know someone else, please feel free to share it with others. That's what it's all about. If you want more information, again, assist.org. You can come to my website. There's tons of information there. And I have a new website. Now it's an old website, just with a new face, this face. And you'll find all kinds of good information there as well about all of this. All right. Thanks for being here, you guys. Really appreciate it. Bye for now.